Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the East Riding of Yorkshire series. Together with the unparished city of Hull, it forms the county of the same name. There's 172 parishes here. Which one are we in today? Welcome back to the East Riding of Yorkshire again, people. We've got 2 left to do now in the county, and I promise you that is the correct figure this time. This one is one of the most complicated that the county has to offer. It's one of the reasons why I've left it so late. This one's got 3 separate settlements that we need to cover, plus a whole lot of other bits and bobs, which I just have to mention at some point. It's going to be very complicated, this. Let's take a walk and a lot of driving around the parish of Woodmansey. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Woodmansey, Woodman's Lake. With just 2 to go in the East Riding, the finish line for the county is in sight. In this episode, we're taking on the penultimate piece of land I've yet to set foot into, and it's a very complicated one. This is Woodmansey, and as the name suggests, there is a village of the same name here. Really though, this one should be called something that more accurately describes it, because there are 2 other settlements as well. One of them is called Thearne, a tiny hamlet which is where the Wawne ferry that we learned about last week deposited passengers on the western bank of the River Hull. The other is Dunswell, which is, in my opinion, much more of a village than Woodmansey itself. The parish boundaries are a bit crazy here too. They take in quite a lot of land north of the main village, land which has increasingly been encroached upon by the expansion of Beverley. Resultingly, a lot of Woodmansey's residents don't actually live in the village. Instead, they occupy the vast swathe of Beverlovian housing estates that have been added south of the town. The road layout here is a bit of an odd one too. The A1174 is the principal road here, and it snakes its way around some pretty unforgiving bends between Beverley and Hull. For many reasons, this was among the most challenging I've ever covered in the East Riding of Yorkshire. So, let's get to it and see how I got on. We start not in Woodmansey, but in Dunswell, a small village close to the northern border of the city of Hull. Dunswell is a modern name, believe it or not. It used to be alternatively known as beer houses due to the presence of 2 inns in close proximity. There are still 2 here today, but one is noted more for its food. This is the Coach and Horses, which is a Chinese restaurant. If you didn't know that from the exterior, the smell on the air here definitely gives it away. When Dunswell was called beer houses, the Coach and Horses was called the Plough. We'll catch the other pub in a bit. Off to the left is Dunswell Lane, and it's all fun and games here when the bin lorry and the farm vehicles meet each other, as you can tell. Down here there's a mission church dedicated to St Faith. This opened in 1951, making it one of the newest in the East Riding. Previously, Dunswell had a nonconformist chapel too, which held its last service in 1968. It dated from 1814 and it was built for the Methodist New Connection branch. At that time, Dunswell had fewer than 20 houses, most of which lined this one street. There was once a post office here. Now gone, today it forms one of the current residences. Now if you keep walking in this direction, you eventually come to a bridge over a watercourse, and that watercourse is the Beverley and Barmston Drain, which we have briefly mentioned in previous episodes. Dunswell sits between two watercourses. One of course is the Beverley and Barmston Drain, the other one is the River Hull, and now we're going to turn around, go back past the pub and go and find that river. Back to the main road. Next we have Dunswell Academy. As a school, this opened in 1881, but it's changed so much since those days. In 2013, it was listed for closure by the East Riding of Yorkshire Council. Massively opposed by the residents, its closure was averted by transferring to academy status as a subsidiary of the primary school in Swanland. This small war memorial sits outside. It has the names of the 11 men who died in the 2 World Wars. Heading north, we're off to find the second pub. On the way, we pass a house with a massive anchor in its drive. How's that for unusual? This is the Ship Inn, and it's relatively new because it's only been built for 100 years or so. Back in its beer houses days, Dunswell's second pub was called the Wagon and Horses, and it was directly opposite the Plough. That means the Ship is now the only place in Dunswell to get a pint, or 10. Ings Lane now, where there's a garden centre. By the end of this video, you'll be sick of seeing garden centres. Woodmansey Parish has loads of them, and Ings Lane is just the tip of the iceberg. More on them later, because we're using Ings Lane primarily to get to the River Hull at the end of the road. Here's the river. The houses you can see on the eastern bank are part of Kingswood, a major Hull suburb. Let's follow the river for a bit. Water has always played a key role in Dunswell's existence. In 1893, the Newington Water Company opened a water supply works here to replace a source at Swanland that had become contaminated by salt. The company was later taken over by the Hull Corporation shortly after. In 1911, an additional waterworks opened with a well, 16 feet in diameter, and a series of adits. The adit system was expanded in the 1950s to meet demand from Beverley. Now off the riverbank, we find ourselves on the playing field now, modest but still large enough to provide Dunswell's residents with a modicum of recreational space. The field is complemented by the main communal building in the village. That would be the Dunswell Village Institute, effectively the village hall. It serves an ever-increasing population. Low-level housing development took place in Dunswell in the second half of the 20th century, with houses on Ings Lane and new cul-de-sacs such as the Meadows and Dean Close. Dunswell would be absorbed into Woodmansey Parish in 1985. So as you can see behind me there's the main road which we walked up earlier. We've completed a nice little circuit of Dunswell. Now between here and Woodmansey, which is the main village in this parish, there's a place called Thearne. Let's get in the car and drive through that one. This is the A1174, a major road between Hull and Beverley. In Woodmansey Parish, it's also the main road between Dunswell and the main village itself. However, between the two, there's also a little-known settlement called Thearne. You have to turn off the A1174 to reach most of it, mind you. Thearne is a very spread-out settlement. Modern-day Thearne includes some housing along the A1174, but originally it was a tiny hamlet. The oldest part of the village is located at the meeting point of 3 minor roads. 2 of these are Ferry Lane and Thearne Lane, the latter of which we're driving on right now. This used to be alternatively known as Old Wire or Wife Car Road. Thearne's most notable building is its hall. Built in 1823, we can't see it from here because it's set back from the road. Thearne used to have a windmill for corn too in the 1800s, and an earlier mill existed in the 17th century. The newer mill had steam power installed in 1856, but by the 1920s it had fallen out of use. Ferry Lane led east to the River Hull, where the Wawne ferry crossed the river to the Anchor Inn on the eastern bank. The ferry, as we learned last week, ran until 1946. Here's what the end of Ferry Lane looks like today. It's a dead end with a sparse number of properties on the riverbank. The ferry ceased operation when Walter Twydale, the owner of the Anchor, or Wyndham Arms as it became known, reported that the ferry boat was no longer safe to use. No ferry has crossed the river ever since. Now let's head back to the A1174. Here's a few more Thearne-based facts as we go. The name Thearne is a reference to a thorn tree and was recorded as early as the late 13th century. In the 15th century, a chapel dedicated to the Blessed Virgin was established here. It was later confiscated during Henry VIII's suppression, and it's no longer in existence. A primitive Methodist chapel was later built in 1867. Flooding of the Beverley to Hull Road led to orders for an improvement of the area's drainage in the 17th century. Although the Beverley and Barmston drain was constructed through the area in around 1800, it didn't actually actively drain Thearne. Now we're heading south again via the A1174. One thing that Thearne is perhaps most noted for would be its extensive glasshouse agriculture. Driving down this road, you simply can't miss it. On both sides, greenhouses seem to go for miles off into the distance. What are they growing, you ask? Well, salad crops is the answer in most cases. Some, though, are used by garden centres, and here's one of them, Coletta and Tyson, which stock a huge range of plants grown in their very own nurseries. They've been doing that for at least 70 years. As well as plants, they stock garden furniture, cooking and heating items, and a huge range of gardening products. They also boast a cafe and a deli. Back north again, and now our focus shifts to the road we're on. The Hull to Beverley Road was turnpiked in 1741. It's no longer a toll road now, of course, but it has altered dramatically since its early days. Plaxton Bridge Road is one of the old loops off what was a windy, narrow route at one time, but it's been straightened along several stretches. Plaxton Bridge is still used, but only by local traffic. Most just zips past on the modern road between Hull and Beverley. Both, though, cross the Beverley and Barmston drain. Rounding off Thearne is a second garden centre, but this one, technically speaking, is in Woodmansey. You'd certainly hope it is anyway, given it's literally named after the village. Woodmansey is part of the Klondike and Strikes chain of garden centres, which are located all over the UK. There are 23 in total, with 14 of them in England. Like all the others, this one is open 7 days a week. Woodmansey really is the place to come if you like gardening. That's for sure. I told you this one was complicated, didn't I? And I wasn't joking. We're still not quite in the village proper yet to do our main walk. Before you actually hit Woodmansey village, the road bends again towards the village, and on this corner here you can see there's a war memorial just there. There's also a school and the church, which is behind the camera. Let's cover all three of those before we head into the village proper. Woodmansey's War Memorial stands on a sharp bend before the main village. This has 55 names on it, but not all of them died in conflict. 47 of them served and returned, whilst the other 8 made the ultimate sacrifice. The men listed came from Woodmansey, Thearne and Beverley Park. Just up the road is Woodmansey Church of England Voluntary Control Primary School. This was opened in 1856. Prior to that, no school was recorded in either Woodmansey or Thearne. A schoolhouse was added in 1889. The schoolroom was often used for church services, and speaking of those, opposite both landmarks is the Church of St Peter, which is a lot more modern than it first appears. This was built to a design by Alfred Beaumont and opened in 1898. Before it was built, Anglican church services in Woodmansey were held in the former Methodist chapel in Thearne. In 1998, St Peter's Church celebrated its centenary with a display of memorabilia and old photographs, and another similar service was held in 2018. Be warned, this church is very difficult to park for. There is a space nearby off the A1174, but don't use it, because it's reserved for police vehicles only. Okay, so now we've come up Hull Road and we've taken a left turn into Paradise Drive, which is where the car will be parked for this main walk. I say main walk, to be honest with you, you'll be lucky if this walk is any longer than the one I just done around Dunswell, to be honest with you. Woodmansey is not a big village, to be quite honest. Let's take a wander and see what it's got. Now we're in Woodmansey proper, where the A1174 continues its journey north into Beverley. Much like Dunswell, part of Woodmansey grew along this road, while the rest grew along King Street to the north. Otherwise, the village is much newer, occupying land to its north and east. Woodmansey has one pub, and this is it. It's called the Wharton Arms. It's built on the site of a former pub called the Dixon's Arms. It's well known locally thanks to its thatched roof. As we know, thatched roofs are a rare feature in East Yorkshire. The straw for this was brought in especially for this pub. Over the way is a bus stop. Woodmansey is served by 3 buses, the numbers 23, 121 and 110. They'll get you to Beverley, Hull and even as far as Bridlington. Wharton Drive next as we head into the main village cluster. Wharton is an important name in Woodmansey. The Wharton family were ancient lords of the Watertowns Manor, which both Woodmansey and Thearne were part of. It's not totally clear which Wharton the pub is named after specifically, but land in both townships was owned by the family. Some of it was used as pasture by Michael Wharton until his death in 1688. So what's Woodmansey like in modern terms then? Well, exactly that, modern. However, King Street is the oldest in the village. Woodmansey was originally laid out along this road. In 1900 it was a dead end with a pub at one end and a Baptist chapel at the other. A few of the older houses remain along here, but a lot have gone. The rest were built in either the very late 19th century or within the 20th. King Street is no longer a dead end either. You can now drive all the way around the village and end up on the A1174. Back in 1900, this was only possible on foot via a track. Of course, you can continue on foot in the same way today, but I opted instead to head through King Street Park. This long linear field is located between King Street and Queensway and has a decent selection of playground equipment and a small football pitch. They all appear well used too, which is always good to see. Aside from that, and the pub, Woodmansey has very few amenities, but then again it doesn't really need all that many. One reason for that is because it's so close to Beverley. Even so, it does still possess a shop. Square Star Pizza right next door occupies a recent extension. Our last job is to complete the route by using Scholefield Avenue. In 1900 this was just a field crossed by that aforementioned track which led to the church. Later OS maps dating from 1950 still show this to all be fields. You can probably tell by now I was struggling for any more to say about Woodmansey. A nice village it might be, but the lack of any real history, aside from the bits we've already discussed, means it's difficult to write about. There was one final landmark at least. On the end of Scholefield Avenue is a white phone box, the last we'll see in an East Riding village. And there you go, we're all the way around Woodmansey village. Someone just beat their horn at me there, must have recognised me, who knows. So you can see there, Paradise Drive is just over there. It's that big housing estate where we began this main walk. And you might be thinking at this point, how come Woodmansey Parish's population is so big? Surely they don't all live here and in Dunswell. Well, they don't, because Woodmansey Parish has been expanding, shall we say, over the past few years. We're going to take a drive now towards Beverley and I'll show you where most of the people here live. Once through Woodmansey village, you'll find yourself in the countryside for a short way until you hit a roundabout just south of Beverley. Off it is the town's Lidl store, a brand new supermarket opened by the German chain in February 2020. That makes it one of the newest in the country at present. It may be out of town, so to speak, but its existence here is justified. The Lidl store is part of a massive £9 million retail park development, which was given the green light in 2019. The Lidl store cost £6 million to build. The other 3 was spent on the rest, and here's a glimpse at what else there is to be had here. Currently there's a petrol station, a Costa Coffee and a Burger King, but future plans involve the addition of a pub and a restaurant, a gym and some office and business space too. These would all create scores of jobs on the southern edge of Beverley. The Lidl store alone already has. Its construction has led to the creation of 40 new jobs, both full and part-time. So why is that retail park needed? The answer to that can be found by driving along the A164 Minster Way, the brand new southern arm of the Beverley bypass. Vast swathes of land between this and the current extent of the town are being built on, hundreds of new homes on what was previously fields and farmland. Now, it would be impossible to show you the full extent of these new builds, mainly because some are still construction sites. However, I did opt to drive up Ward Way at least to give you a flavour of what's to come. These estates have vastly expanded not only the population of Beverley, but also that of Woodmansey. Now you can understand why the parish's population is so big, even though Woodmansey, Dunswell and Thearne are relatively small. There is another reason why the population is so large though. West of the new builds, there's a much older housing estate which also falls within Woodmansey's boundaries. Travel up Minster Way a little further and you'll come to a roundabout which gives you access to Lincoln Way. Lincoln Way is the principal street on the Keldgate Park estate, a huge 20th century housing development where a lot of Woodmansey's population live. Halfway up this long road there's a co-op. Keep your eyes on the left hand side of the screen and you might catch it. That used to be another pub. It was called the Lincoln Arms. It opened in 1988, originally under a different name, the Sanctuary. It's believed it may have taken its name from the ancient sanctuary stones which stood around Beverley. 3 of those survive today, and one isn't all that far away from the former pub. The Sanctuary was renamed the Lincoln Arms in the year 2000, but obviously there's no ale being served there now. Keldgate Park also has a care home, a playing field, and several shops within the vicinity of the former Lincoln Arms pub. We're now almost in Beverley, but not quite. At the end of Lincoln Way you'll hit a roundabout where Victoria Road meets Queensgate. Turn right here and you're heading for Keldgate and the southern fringes of Beverley town centre. Despite what you might think at this point though, we're not done with Woodmansey just yet. And the reason why is simply because there are 2 big landmarks here in Beverley which are actually over the parish boundary into Woodmansey. One of them is a cemetery which we'll walk to in a moment. The other one is this, Beverley Grammar School. There's actually 2 schools here. One of them is Queensgate Preschool, and that's this building by the roadside. Beverley Grammar School though is the much more important, historically speaking anyway. Founded in 700 AD, this claims to be the oldest state school in England. However, the existence of a school here is not continuous, so that claim is slightly flawed. In medieval times, the school occupied a building in the southwestern corner of Beverley Minster's grounds. That was demolished in 1602 before being replaced 7 years later. It then moved to Keldgate in 1816. For a short time in the 1880s it closed, but after some makeshift accommodation was found in Greyburn Lane, it reopened in 1889. In 1902, a new site in Queensgate was purchased and soon its popularity began to increase. Several sporting celebrities were educated here, including tennis player Kyle Edmund, Leeds and England goalkeeper Paul Robinson, and cricket umpire Neil Mallender. It also has the dubious honour of educating alleged gunpowder plotter Thomas Percy in the 16th century. Now, Queensgate used to be a through road at this point, but these days it's a dead end. Don't take this the wrong way, but that phrase has more than one meaning here. Next to the school is Queensgate Cemetery. The land this sits on was acquired by the Beverley Corporation in 1905. From 1911, part of this was used for burials from the former East Riding Asylum in Walkington. Most of those graves, though, are unmarked. They didn't have any specifically reserved area, but most are believed to occupy a small section in the northeastern corner. Perhaps adding to the uncertainty, in 1919 Queensgate was extended when burials from St Mary's required extra space. Okay, that's it. That's Woodmansey in the books, which means we've only got one left here in the East Riding of Yorkshire, and I think by now you all know what it is. Yes, the final episode is around the corner, but before we get to it, I had one last mission to accomplish in Woodmansey. Beverley's branch of Morrison's is also within the parish boundaries. It's right at the end of Minster Way, just before the A164's junction with the A1079. This retail park also includes several other stores like a B&M and a Halfords. It's also got a McDonald's, and after all that driving around, I needed food. Well, I had to be fueled up and ready for the big finale, right? Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.